Go! So we're live. This is the lovely Darren Edwards. We're going to do a special this is going to be a story of distinction and genius with bells, whistles and knobs on. I'm just going to press some music as well, which just gives a bit of context. And then I'll see you on the other side of this music. But welcome if you're watching across the various social media platforms. And I'll blow a bit of happy smoke at you, Darren, and then we'll be off on the open road.
Good.
Boom. So this gets edited back on later, but here we go. Welcome to another episode of the Good Listening To Show, your life and times with me, Chris Grimes, the storytelling show that features The Clearing, where all good questions come to get asked and all good stories come to be told. And where all my guests have two things in common. They're all creative individuals and all with an interesting story to tell. There are some lovely storytelling metaphors, a clearing, a tree, a juicy storytelling exercise called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, some alchemy, some gold, a cheeky bit of Shakespeare, and a cake. So it's all to play for. So yes, welcome to the Good Listening To Show, your life and times with me, Chris Grimes. Are you sitting comfortably? Then we shall begin. And begin we shall. Welcome to a very special episode on World Mental Health Day, which is wholly appropriate because we've got an extraordinary individual. I ran out of superlative adjectives about you when I was thinking about what to say about you at the beginning, but I had the great privilege to see you speak recently at the Entrepreneurs Circle Entrepreneurs Convention at the Birmingham ICC a few weeks ago. I was there as a VIP, not because I'm important, because I paid a bit more money to be there, but we got to shake hands. And as we did so, I said, we have Joe Bradshaw in common. And you immediately said, oh, fantastic. I love Joe Bradshaw, who's an Everest mountaineer, and she survived an avalanche last time that happened as well. And so I thought, brilliant, that will give me just a good excuse and reason to get in touch with you. So Darren Edwards, it's an extraordinary privilege to interview you. Welcome to you. I'll blow a bit more happy smoke at you shortly, but how's morale? What's your story of the day first, Darren?
Yeah, good. Thank you for having me on. I should start by saying that. And to slightly quote Jerry Maguire, you had me at, not at hello, but you had me at Joe Bradshaw. So yeah, Joe's someone I really look up to and am inspired by. So very glad to have met her. And likewise with you. Yeah, it was nice it was funny the thought that people actually wanted to come and have a photo with me. So I was...
Yes, two things going on there. I do a lot of comedy improvisation, and in the universe of yes and, if you say yes more in life, more doors on lubricated hinges can open. But also there's that lovely networking strategy, which is all you need to do in life is make the connection of who am I, what's our connection, and why am I talking to you? And then all sorts of possibilities can open up. And I'm really thrilled and honored. As I said, on World Mental Health Day of all days, you said yes to being here. I saw your very poignant post this morning about your father's suicide.
Yeah.
I appreciate we may or may not talk about that, but you're a groundbreaking adaptive adventurer, expedition leader, and motivational speaker. And why you're an adaptive adventurer, of course, is the core of your story. So as I curate you through the structure of the Good Listening To Show, it's going to be a great honor to curate you through the various gateposts. But you just want to tell the story behind the story of why you are labeled as being, as your own volition, as you've formed adaptive expeditions, why you would define yourself, just so our listeners who haven't got a context yet, and if you have ears, prepare to open them now. This is the extraordinary Darren Edwards. So over to you, just to answer that first rather convoluted, I now realize, question.
No, thank you. Yeah, so I didn't start off life with that label of adaptive or I used to call myself a disabled adventurer, and then I kind of thought there's a huge irony in suggesting with the first word that you can't do something, and all you do is go on and do things. But I started, a bit like Joe Bradshaw, life as someone who was very passionate about mountaineering and climbing, and that being a huge part of my kind of sense of identity and who Darren Edwards was as a 26-year-old guy. And when I looked to my future, I often looked to the mountains I wanted to climb in the bucket list of adventures still to come. And then on the 6th of August, 8 years ago, I was climbing in North Wales with my best friend, somebody who I'd climbed with for the best part of a decade by that point. And as I got to the top of a 250-foot section of cliff, the short version of the story is, as I climbed to the top and stood with the drop beneath me, the section of rock that I happened to be stood on, which was 4 foot wide and 2 foot deep, collapsed beneath my feet. And all of a sudden I found myself sort of falling off the top of World's End. And it was only the actions of Matt, and I'm sure we can talk about it in more detail later, that ultimately saved my life. But I landed on a ledge 40 foot down. I broke my back on impact. I severed my spinal cord, and that was the moment that Darren Edwards would be, paralysed from the chest down for the rest of his life, and have to find not a new sense of identity, but would have to really rely on kind of perseverance and resilience, even if you don't feel resilient in the moment it happens, to build back slowly but surely, and to start that toughest fight of not giving in to the temptation of that label, being disabled and not doing stuff anymore.
And when I listened to you again at the entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurs convention, what I took from listening to you, if I may say, is that I thought, this is extraordinary, because this man has hit rock bottom, excuse the metaphor, but 3 times.
Yeah.
And I know you called yourself a groundbreaking adaptive adventure, and I thought, gosh, there's an extraordinary irony in that too. And the rock bottom was, and I'm sure you'll unpack this, was actually the moment you hit the rock bottom, severed your cord, as you said, but then you've had 2 other rock bottoms that it's wonderful that you've recovered from since. And I know that was the demise of the relationship with, at the time, the love of your life. And I'm not stealing any thunder from you. And then the third one, of course, which I mentioned at the beginning, was this is now the 3-year anniversary, I gather, of the suicide of your own father as well. Yeah.
So there was a literal rock bottom, which was at the site of my climbing accident. There was the emotional rock bottom of 4.5 months later, just about to leave and to start living life again. And my vision for the future had that one person very much in it, and I needed that person to help me to sort of, to be resilient enough to get through the tough times. And that person ultimately couldn't see how we were going to survive as a couple. And that was, if I thought rock bottom was my accident, then I was well and truly wrong, because that emotional turmoil was so much harder to overcome. And I think that's so true of life, isn't it? The physical scars often heal quicker than the emotional ones. And then, you've touched on, it's World Mental Health Day today. And 3 years ago, I lost my dad, who was an old school man that didn't open up about his emotions and his own struggles, and just isolated himself more and more, and ultimately couldn't find the light through the dense trees. And every time Mental Health Day comes around, I do question whether or not things could have been different had the conversation that we're having as a society be a bit more progressive and a bit more open, that one man can say to another man that he's struggling, and to ask that bloke for help.
Yes. Very interestingly, I recently have done a show in Bristol, where I lived, for the Bristol Beer Factory, and they host men's talk clubs at Bristol Beer Factory premises. And talk club is, of course, how are you out of 10 is the one way to open up a way of calibrating one's mental health. So again, that's very apposite for today's conversation as well. Yes, I'm so happy to have you here. And also, again, just finally, when I saw you speak, I was so happy to hear at the end when you said, and I very recently married the love of my life. So it's not, so you have found a new path in that regard as well.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I think we all do it, but whenever we go through breakups, we catastrophize that this is the end of happiness and this is the end of love as you know it. And you're right, but not for the right reason. It's right because the person I've obviously gone on to meet and has become the love of my life, and now my wife, has shown me in more ways than I can count that it doesn't matter whether I'm sat down or stood up. Love is love, and I am me. And unfortunately, the other person couldn't see that, but ultimately it was for my own benefit, because I went on to meet someone that look forward to living the rest of life with, and doing all the things that we can do.
And I love that, whether I'm sat down or stood up, and the things you have thrown yourself into are extraordinary in how you're, as you say of your own volition, redefining the impossible, I know your absolute ambition is to sit ski to, is it the South Pole or the North
To
Pole?
the South Pole, yeah.
So how come the question on everyone, why not the North Pole, please?
I think it was to steer clear of polar bears, to be completely honest. No, I think I grew up in inner city London, actually, until like an early teen. But reading sort of Shackleton and Scott and Amundsen and these kind of stories of polar exploration and Antarctic, that kind of the golden era of Antarctic exploration, it was like a world that I didn't think I'd ever, get to be part of or to experience. And then, obviously, since my accident, I've had doors open, and you used that analogy earlier of lubricating the doors that open, and the opportunities that have opened to me have been above and beyond whatever I could have imagined for myself, able-bodied or not. And one of those experiences and opportunities was to be part of an all-disabled team to sit ski and ski across the largest ice cap in Europe, which is the Vatnajökull in Iceland. And to put it into context, this is an area the size of South Wales. If you look at Google Maps of Iceland, it's a fifth of the land surface. And me and two other guys with spinal cord injuries skied across, unsupported, unassisted, and halfway across this kind of frozen wonderland. Not that there were days where we didn't think it was a wonderland, but this pristine, untouched environment. And I think halfway across, I started to think about maybe the South Pole could belong to anyone. It doesn't have to be, the kind of the Ranulph Fiennes of the world. It could belong to somebody with a disability. And 12 days later, when we reached the eastern edge of that ice cap, I think in my head I was committed to making, like you said, to redefining the impossible, which I've really enjoyed doing, particularly over the last 3 to 4 years. And the reason I call myself a groundbreaking adventurer, not a world record holder or whatever, is because I really don't won't swear, but I don't really care about world records or titles or a plaque on the wall at home, and that is the post, and that's the dog.
Lovely. The best type of heckler.
Yeah, exactly. Groundbreaking because, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to push that line a bit further forward in the hope that it empowers somebody else with a disability of any form, or anybody, to go and to push that line a little bit further. So, you might be a record holder for a day, a week, a month, a year. Who cares, but if you can empower other people to fight their own fight and to arrive at their own metaphorical South Pole, then
love that. Yep. You're a complete testament to that wonderful idea that, out of adversity comes great creativity, and, you are a real force to be reckoned with. And again, wonderful. Let's curate you then through the journey of the Good Listening To show. There's going to be a clearing a tree, a lovely juicy storytelling exercise called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There's going to be some alchemy, some gold, a couple of random squirrels, a cheeky bit of Shakespeare, a golden button, and a cake. So it's absolutely all to play for. Take this where you like, when you like, how you like, as deep as you like. And at the end, we'll find out exactly where we can come and find you, not just about adaptive expeditions, but where we can book you as the extraordinary motivational speaker that you are as well. So Darren Edwards, groundbreaking adaptive adventurer, what is a clearing for you? Where is your serious happy place? Where do you go to get clutter-free, inspirational, and able to think?
I categorically do all of my best thinking and creative thinking in particular outside. I don't think that's going to be any surprise for any of us, actually. But for me, as you've just heard, I have a dog. That dog is called Murphy. He's a border collie, boundless amounts of energy and enthusiasm for being outside, which is a great excuse for me on, the good days and the bad days, weather-wise, and I guess mental health-wise as well. Let's touch on that for Mental Health Day. It'd be very easy for me to sit here and say that every day is an easy day, but that's obviously not true. And I'm still, coming to terms with certain things that we've referred to with my accident and with my dad and all of that stuff. So for me to get peace and to feel connected to myself and to nature and to, even feel connected to my dad, go on a walk over. I'm very lucky that I live in Shropshire. So you've got kind of what feels like endless countryside on the doorstep. And for me, heading to the top of the Shropshire Hills, somewhere called Cardingwell Valley, you've got kind of, landscape for miles around you in every direction. And I feel very connected to those things that I've mentioned there, to myself, to people like my dad that aren't here. I'm not religious, but, I feel like a sense of connection there. And when it comes to my creative thinking and working through life's challenges and opportunities, and also committing to some of these big life goals like the South Pole, a lot of that took flight and was really created in my mind on a walk, whether that was on my own with my wife or with my friends. And for me, that's the clearing that I couldn't do without.
And say the name of the Shropshire, easy for me to say, valley again.
Cardingmill Valley.
Cardingmill.
Carding Mill, as in a mill.
Sorry, thank you.
It's beautiful. So if anybody has been,
ironically, it's called The Good Listening to Show, and I couldn't hear Cardingmill. Sorry. And I love the fact that your dad is there too. Very relatably, my own father died just over a month ago, and a friend very poignantly got in touch and said, "Welcome to the Dead Dads Club." Not a pleasant place to be, but there you have it. So this is all very relatable. The human condition and perspective, which is what is boundless in what you bring to the equation of your own story. So I'm really excited. So here we are then in Shropshire, in Cardingmill, I think you'll find, Valley. Now I'm going to arrive with a tree in your clearing, and we're going to shake your tree to see which storytelling apples fall out. So this is where you've been kind enough, Darren, to have thought about 4 things that have shaped you, 3 things that inspire you, 2 things that never fail to grab your attention, and that's where the random squirrels will come in. And then the 1 is a quirky or unusual fact about you we couldn't possibly know about you until you tell us. It's not a memory test, so just to curate you through that, interpret the shaking of the canopy of your tree as you see fit. Yeah.
Should we start with number 4? Remind me of 4 again.
It's 4 things that have shaped you.
4 things that have shaped me. I'm not going to pick the obvious one, which is my accident, because I think that the first thing is actually the day after my accident, when I had a surgeon stood at the end of my bed, who delivered the kind of, obviously that heartbreaking news that I'd severed, I'd broken my back and I sustained a spinal cord injury. But all, in amongst that kind of, that quite serious message, he offered a sort of real strong insight into what mattered most. And he encouraged me to learn to look forward and not over my shoulder. And I think I said that at the talk because I think it's one of the most profound things I've ever been told. And at the time, I reacted to that with a bit of anger because I wanted to be told that I could recover. But then I think what he said was quite brilliant in its own way, which is so true. We can waste a lot of energy looking over our shoulder towards the past. No one listening can change the past, but that encouragement to look to the future speaks to the doors that have opened, not the doors that have shut, and that kind of that's really powerful. So that's probably the first of the. And
if I may, the word severance is really profound in that, because it's a severance from the past in terms of perspective, but it's also a new beginning and a new pathway, and it's almost like you've created your own new pathways despite the fact your spinal cord was cut. So the severance is extraordinary.
Yeah, exactly. So that was probably the first. The second was 4.5 months later when that relationship ended, and one of my physios, could see how broken I was, and I didn't feel like I had any resilience left. And she kind of came up to me and said, "Look, I know that me telling you to be positive right now isn't really going to achieve anything, but what I want you to do is to think first and foremost about the man you want to become." And it was this concept of, pick a point in the future. And she said to me, think 4 years in the future, think about the man that you've become, what he's gone on to achieve, and then retrace those steps to right here, right now. And all I want you to do is take the first tiny step towards that vision of who you want to become. And she's like, it's not that your emotions don't matter, but it's that our actions can inform how we feel, just as they can vice versa. And I think that was the inspiration and the empowerment for me to pick this vision of, in 4 years' time, being at the Paralympic Games, having turned adversity into, opportunity, adversity into the greatest moment of achievement in my life. So anytime that I kind of get, revisited by the ghost of adversity, with the example of my dad, I kind of think about, all right, let's revisit that and think in a year's time, how do I want to have overcome this loss, and what's he gone on to achieve, and what was the first step he took. And that's why in the aftermath of losing dad, I sort of started speaking, because I thought if I could share my journey, it could help others. We set out to row across the English Channel for a mental health charity, which we did. It didn't mean that I didn't miss my dad, but it meant that I did something to help. And I think that probably speaks to the third element, which is purpose. I think for each of us, we go through the sort of proverbial storm in life, and having a sense of purpose is that sense of direction. when it feels like your compass is spinning on its axis and you couldn't point which way is north for all the money in the world, having a sense of purpose is like that guiding light and that kind of North Star. And for me, I think I learned a very important fourth thing when we did my first big expedition after my accident, which was we became the first people to kayak from Land's End to John O'Groats. 1,400 kilometers, 1,000 miles across, some of the toughest coastal waters in Europe, let alone the UK. And me and a team of 4 injured veterans proved the world wrong by doing it and by becoming those first people to achieve this incredible feat. And it all started with me, as you saw on one of my videos, capsizing 5 minutes in. But it taught me the very important lesson that as long as you get back up every 5 minutes, you're still going to move your GPS marker towards your goal. And I think that speaks for so many of us in life. It's about celebrating the small milestones and the small wins just as much as it is the ultimate objective when we do get there. But don't be afraid to give it a go, because the enormity puts you off. Break it down into smaller chunks.
Lovely. I hope you'll mention the wonderfully comic story of when you presented yourself to the Paralympic team with a vessel that you wanted to be in the team. And it was a canoe, I'm assuming.
It was a kayak. Yeah.
So just would you mind, were you going to tell us that story anyway? Or do you mind?
No, go on then. I've been out of hospital for 2 months, and I kayaked for the first time in my life 2 months earlier in a swimming pool, and I was awful. But part of this kind of, journey towards who I wanted to be obviously involved at some point turning up to the Paralympic team and saying, I'm here. And I remember emailing the head coach about 2 months after my discharge and sort of, somewhat exaggerating how much kayaking I'd done in my life. And then turned up on a very cold early March morning, still very much learning to kayak myself, but having probably led him to believe that I was an astute and able paddler. And pushed off from the side of this kind of lake in Nottingham with the remit of drifting into the middle of the lake and doing a sprint in one direction and a sprint in the other direction, and then we take it from there. And I got probably no more than half a metre away from the side before falling in and kind of, coming up out of the water to the look of shock on his face. And he just kind of said, look, do you want to go home? And I was like, do you mind if I try one more time? And anyway, that one more time turned into about 20 more times. And every time I got maybe a metre at best further away from the side, and I'd fall in, and I'd do it again and fall in. And at the end of it, he kind of sat me down in his office and said, look, you've got absolutely no talent. But yeah, it was. But he did say that he was going to be blunt, and that he was. But he said, you haven't got any talent, but I can't doubt the commitment and the determination that you're bringing to it. And it's actually those values that we look for more than physical ability, because in time we can make you stronger, faster, stable, but we can't change the way you think. And for me, it was a hugely profound, impactful lesson. There's so many lessons. I know you said pick 4, but that's the 5th. But there's unsurprisingly a lot.
I mean, what was extraordinary about that? You've got no talent, but we're going to take you on, which was just wonderful. Yeah,
but I think it goes to show that, especially when we're growing up, we think that everything is tied into natural ability, don't we? I did at school, definitely. I thought that at school. And if you weren't naturally excelling at something, what was the point? And it took until, 27 with a life-changing accident to be taught a very important lesson I wish I'd learned at 13.
Yes, the gift of hindsight. We're coming on to notes you'd give to your younger self later on, as you know, as well. So thank you for that. And then wind forward 4 years, you were at the Paralympics.
No, wind forward 3 years. It's the season before the Paralympic Games. We then have COVID, obviously. The Paralympics get pushed back from 2020 to 2021. I had to finish first. There was only ever going to be one spot for the person that would qualify. And a couple of weeks before the race season started, I tore my left shoulder in the gym, and would ultimately watch that kind of race season unfold on YouTube live and kind of feeling sorry for myself. And that's where the concept of, the Land's End to John O'Groats thing came about. And it wouldn't have happened had I qualified for the Paralympics. And this whole life as an adaptive adventurer wouldn't have been given birth to had I qualified, because I would have stuck in parasport. So actually, what I considered a failure was a huge lesson. But we'll talk on that later about the lessons to my younger self, because that's another big one.
And forgive me for going on my own sort of catch your number 4 rabbit hole there. But that was a really lovely story, because I was struck with that and found it very, very funny, as did the rest of the audience, when you're talking about the you have no talent, but we like your attitude.
Yeah.
So sorry, back to your tree. We're in the shapeage of the canopy still.
Yeah. What are we on now? So we've done the 4 lessons.
Okay, now we're on to 3 things that inspire you.
That's it. 3 things that inspire me. So for me, it's on the conversation point, I guess. The first thing that I would say really inspired me was the Paralympic Games, but it wasn't, I guess, the Paralympic Games as such. It was the people and the stories that were part of it. And, I think I said to you that while I was starting my rehab, you start by being flat on your back for 6 weeks, immobilized. You can't move or bend, or you can't do anything for yourself. But for 2 of those weeks, the Paralympics were on TV. And all of a sudden, I saw people that had gone through a very similar lived experience to me, extreme adversity, life-changing injuries, that were showing the world exactly what was possible. And it was what was possible through perseverance and resilience. And I watched those games through a completely different lens. I think for every games before that, 2012, whatever it had been, I'd watched it as an able-bodied person and thought, good for you. Things that would,
yes,
annoy me now. If someone said good for you, I'd be like, okay, that's condescending, thank you very much. But that's probably the way I watched the Paralympic Games. And then all of a sudden, these people are speaking as to what you can achieve yourself. And that was, I don't think I've ever been more inspired by that.
Yes.
By anything than the Paralympic Games. So for me, I think that's first and foremost one thing that really does inspire me. Second, I think it's kind of, people sometimes make the mistake of thinking that I hate being called an inspirational speaker, but you have to be on stage to be an inspirational person, where actually I think some of the most inspiring people that I know are people that do it in the shadows, quietly, in everyday life, that persevere through difficult kind of, moments of adversity, whether that's health related or whether that's professional, in their professional or personal lives. And I think sometimes, people think that you have to climb Everest or kayak from Land's End to John O'Groats or do something, extremely out there to be considered inspiring. Whereas actually, I think those everyday acts of resilience really inspire me. I've got personal friends that have gone through cancer diagnosis that have, without any fanfare, without any social media following, have fought that battle for the people that they care about most, their sort of daughter at home or their wife. And I think that's incredibly inspiring.
The idea of being a hero purely from the premise of it's how you show up each day.
Yeah. It's like
on the daily.
It's the unsung hero, isn't it? I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Like, on one hand, I'm saying those Paralympic heroes. On the other hand, I'm saying the unsung heroes. And you know what? Bring it really close to home for me, that third thing that inspires me is my wife. Because, since we met, obviously I fell head over heels in love with her. She's incredible. But on our first date, we spoke about children, and we spoke about how being parents was really important to both of us, and it would be a deal breaker for either person. So thank God we both agreed that we wanted at least 3 kids. And she knew that being with me meant that fertility and, having children would be different, because for all the will in the world, we probably can't conceive naturally. So we've gone through, 5 rounds of IVF, which resulted in 3 miscarriages, 2 ultimate no luck from the start. And I saw her go through that process, and it was heartbreaking, because as the man, you can't take the pain away from, you can't take that role away from the woman. But she was so resilient. She was so undeterred, to achieve what she wanted to achieve, which was to be a mum. And she was so willing to adapt the way that she did things, whether that was through IVF, ICSI, and ultimately we're about to start our family as two parents adopting a baby. And for me to see her go through that really incredibly difficult journey, but to see how she doesn't give up hope of what it is that she wants to become, which is a mum, and for us to start a family, and see the way she's willing to pivot and adapt, has been so inspiring. And one of the things I love about her is her resilience. And I'm very inspired by the person that I get to spend my life with. So
the moniker of you both being adaptive adventurers is just profound, because it's about how you adapt and continue on life's adventures. It's perfect.
Yeah, for sure.
Lovely. And now we're on to two things that never fail to grab your attention, and borrowed from the film Up. That's a bit, squirrels, what never fails to grab your attention, irrespective of anything else that might be happening for you in your hectic life.
Yeah, so two things that never fail to grab my attention. I was say my emotion then, my attention. So I think for the first thing for me, obviously, as you know, a part of an occupational, I was going to say occupational hazard, but it's the opposite of a hazard, because it's an occupational benefit of being a speaker, is that you get to come to the conferences like the EC conference at the ICC. And often, I remember this year, that particular conference, I was introduced as the person that no one's going to know the name of, which I will happily accept, because I'm not on TV and I'm not a famous face. But obviously you get to share these kind of things with people that you've kind of looked up to or have been inspired by. And one of the people I always remember that I got to see at a conference was one of the first people that I ever saw on those Paralympic Games on that little hospital monitor, a lady called Emma Wiggs, who I saw her get out of the wheelchair, get into a kayak. This is probably where the kayak inspiration came from, and saw her kind of drift off. And I think that was the kind of like the seed had been planted very much there. But to speak to wider than just Emma, I think something that never fails to grab my attention is how fortunate I am to get to be part of some of these incredible events where you see the names, you see the stories, and you know that you can just turn up a little bit early, or you can stay a little bit later and sit and listen and be inspired by some of these stories. And I think there's a real importance of humility there. I think as a speaker, you can't think that you're the only person that can speak about resilience or something like that. And if I've learned anything in the last 8 years, it's the importance of being humble. And my accident was a massive lesson in humility and stuff. So I always go out of my way to make sure I listen to other people's stories and to take inspiration from other people's journeys as well. So that's one thing that never fails to grab my attention. And one thing I do love about being a speaker. And the other thing I think is similar, but obviously we've referenced Adaptive Expeditions and this kind of company that me and a friend set up only earlier this year actually. But out of the kind of the sad reality that 99% of people with a disability or a life-changing injury don't have the network of friends around them that I had, and it never failed to. I was never not aware of how fortunate I was from day one that I had not only a friend that risked his life to save my life,
yes,
which he did. Matt could have died doing what he did to save my life.
Will you be saying a bit more about that anyway? Because that is an extraordinary story about how he dived on top of you to stop you falling off the next.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, I'll say the second thing, because I'll go back and then explain. So for me, one thing that never fails to get my attention is how lucky I am to have the people I have around me. Friends and family, and we've spoken about perspective very briefly. And for me, my accident and the months that followed were an awful situation, but a really great illustration of how fortunate and lucky I was, to have those people around me. So that's the second thing. So, on the day of my accident, as I fell and as that rock collapsed, Matt was stood on a ledge, no more than 6 foot wide, about 40 foot below me. And he sees his best friend falling through the air. I'm thinking I'm going to fall the whole way to the roadside below, and that was the end of me. But I somehow managed to hit this ledge flat on my back, and obviously I break my back on impact. But I hit it with enough force that I keep going. So I hit, and I'm almost about to bounce off and slip, the remaining 180 feet below me. And Matt sprints from where he stood and just sprints with a mission of intercepting me before I get to the edge of that little ledge and slip off. And all I remember is the feeling of tumbling uncontrollably, and then all of a sudden this weight on top of my chest. And initially I thought that weight was a rock. I thought that weight was a second bit of rock that had been dislodged that was just sort of going to crush me. And I opened my eyes, having realised that I'd stopped, and I opened my eyes to see Matt on top of me. And he just threw his body on top of mine. He reached me as I was about to slip off that ledge. And, we both know that him grabbing hold of me could have taken us both, So one thing that never fails to grab my attention is how lucky I am. And that's why we've set up adaptive expeditions, because unfortunately for others, they don't have those, friends that are just, right, okay, well, if you can't climb, we're going to kayak. If you can't that, we're going to this. And that's why we're trying to give these opportunities for people with, life-changing injuries and conditions. And we can be the people that are their mat, so to speak.
So is Matt your co-founder? Just so I get my story right.
No. Matt is far too busy in the Navy, doing lots of special stuff. So Nick Morrill, a friend of mine from up here, who has been part of my life for a while now.
And I don't doubt that Matt is always close.
He is. Yeah, he is.
Yes. Gosh, what a story. And now a quirky or unusual fact about you that we couldn't possibly know about you, Darren, until you tell us.
There's one thing that not many people know. And that is that, and this makes TJ laugh because she's actually got talent and she can act and sing. I've been in 3 Hollywood films, only as an extra in like the background. I've been a medieval knight, I've been a CIA agent, and I've been in a Bollywood film as well. Having been told that I wouldn't need to dance for the scene, and then found myself in the middle of a dance scene, which was quite funny. But the funny things that you will do for money when you're a university student in London.
This is circa before everything else changed.
Exactly. Yeah. This is the phase of life where I was a history student and budding Hollywood film star.
We haven't mentioned that you're a former soldier as well. I know you mentioned Matt is in the Navy, but yeah. Where were you in the army?
So I was the way life looked for me, it was climbing, mountaineering. I was just starting my career as a history teacher, and I joined the Army Reserve 3 years earlier than that. The local unit, the Rifles, I very quickly found out there was something called the SAS Reserve. And once again, a bit like those Shackleton books, I'd read lots of books about David Stirling and the Special Forces in the Second World War. And someone made a throwaway comment to me about, I think one of the lads in my unit had gone for the selection process, which is the toughest reserve selection process in the world by far, and he'd failed it and made some throwaway comment to me like it's too difficult, you wouldn't be able to do it. And I think that one comment sealed my fate as I don't know, being incredibly stubborn and my ego being bruised that someone thought I wouldn't be able to do it. So I signed up and went and had an incredibly fun couple of years before my accident. So and my accident brought an end to that career as well. So
I went to the David Stirling Monument very, very recently. A very good mutual friend of Joe Bradshaw's and mine, a wonderful man called Dave Stewart, not physics, but the other one from Fresh Air Leadership, who I would encourage you to get in touch with as well, because I know he would love your story as well. Yeah.
So, so like, if we go touch very briefly back on what the surgeon said, I guess, it's about looking forward, not looking back. And
yes,
my life there were things that I was leaving behind me, which I was sad to leave, but if you focus on those things, you'll never find the good stuff that's still ahead of you.
Hence, adaptive adventurer.
Exactly.
And we've shaken your tree, which we did deliciously. Congratulations to you. Now we stay in the clearing, which is still in the valley in Shropshire, called not Clingmill.
Cardingmill Valley. Yeah, Clearing Valley, we should just
Welcome
call it.
To the good listening to show. Yeah, we're still there. And now we're going to talk about alchemy and gold. So you've been giving me and us this by the bucket load in any case, but when you're at purpose and in flow, Darren Edwards, what are you absolutely happiest doing in what you are here purposefully to reveal to the world?
I think I'm happiest now. I think for the first couple of years, I was happiest when I was pursuing my own stuff and proving to myself what was still possible. And that's like the whole Land's End John O'Groats thing, and 7 marathons, 7 days, 7 continents, and like all of those life-changing experiences that were serving the purpose of showing me that I was still so capable and that this adaptive mindset could overcome stuff. But that was only ever going to last so long, I think, because that was a relatively selfish sense of purpose. The selfless sense of purpose, which I think is the real genuine sense of purpose that I've found now, is in helping others. I can't tell you how much it means to me, particularly, we referenced my dad after talks when someone comes up to me and says, I've been really struggling and I just want to say thank you. And only a couple of months after I started ever speaking and stumbling my way through my own story. I remember a young lad coming up to me who must have been a similar age, in his early 30s, and he kind of pulled me aside at the end of a talk and said that he was thinking of going home that night and taking his own life. And he was like, and I just wanted to say, had you not been in here today, I think I would have done it. And I kind of sat there in a state of slight shock and didn't know what to say. And I just said, I'm glad, or whatever. I think I just stumbled over. I got back into my car, and before I turned my car, and I was burst into tears, because I think it was that sense of purpose fulfilled that I'd started speaking for. And adaptive expeditions is another opportunity to help other people. So I think I've found really clear purpose and sincere, genuine purpose in helping others now. After those couple of years of figuring things out for myself, I now am most fulfilled, most happy, and like I'm living the life I'm supposed to be living when I see the impact that, either the story or the logistical support of, look, we're going to kayak across Scotland and we're going to do all the difficult bits for you, and all you got to do is turn up and enjoy it. And I think that's when I really feel like I'm living the life I was always meant to be living. So now I believe that I was meant to have my accident.
What an extraordinary perspective. And I was just thinking that you said you're not religious, but it sounds like you're fatalistic in the point of view of you are here for a purpose and you found that.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm agnostic. I'm open-minded. I think I'm spiritual. I think the universe absolutely blows my mind. But I feel like, we're very lucky to have potentially 60, 70, 80, 90 years on this planet, or, however many. So I don't know. True purpose can be found in helping others and making this the best place to live. If this is the one seat of existence in the universe, let's make it a good one.
Yes. Wow. Just allowing a bit of silence there. And now I'm going to award you with a cake, Darren Edwards. So do you like cake?
I do. I try and control that love of cake, but yeah.
So tragically, until we can get to meet again in person, it's only a metaphorical cake. So what type of cake would you like that you're going to get to put a cherry on the cake of?
The go-to is a carrot cake, to be fair. So I'm going to hold you to that, though.
Yes, please, and my pleasure. And I'll come round your house with a carrot cake. So this looks like a carrot cake, actually, by happy accident. I think it's a dog's toy, but I found it when I was trying to work out what comedy props to use. So now you get to put a cherry on the cake in the form of, what's a favorite inspirational quote? You did mention what your physiotherapist first said to you. It doesn't have to be that one, but it could be. But or the first thing the surgeon said to you. But what is, would you say, your favorite inspirational quote that's always given you succor and pulled you towards your future?
Are we allowing it to be from somebody that I've not met?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think for me, well, I've been lucky to have been told some really profound things by those unsung heroes that are in the shadows, like Kate and the surgeon. But the last few years, for me, the quote by Nelson Mandela, and I think it was 2000, which is a simple one, but it always seems impossible until it's done. And I think that speaks to an awful lot of why I do what I do, and why the South Pole is a thing for me. It's kind of about redefining that sense of what's possible and what's impossible. And that quote gives me hope, I think. And
the whole quote, it's always impossible until it's done, but that could not be accurate enough. Sorry, say it again.
It always seems impossible until it's done.
And how are you getting on with the epic quest to the South Pole to sit ski? How's that going?
We're doing good. So training's going well. The team's fully formed, including Matt, who I wouldn't be here without, including friends from my previous life with SS Reserve. And we're building towards next December, where we'll be flying out to Antarctica to attempt to, put, I was about to say a line in the sand, but a line in the snow more appropriate, wouldn't it? Currently the biggest distance done by somebody on a sit ski is 100 kilometers, and we're attempting to do 333. So it's a significant, groundbreaking move forward. But like I said to you, I really hope that all it does is inspire someone to go the next year and to wipe my record from existence.
And when you said next December, are we talking December 2025?
We are, yeah.
Could I live on air invite you back to tell us how that went?
Of course you can, yeah.
Come and do another ski through the clearing when you've succeeded, because I don't doubt you will.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you.
But surely it's impossible. No, it's been done. Fantastic. Great. So now, what notes, help, or advice might you proffer to a younger version of yourself?
I think we've referred to it very briefly, but I think probably the most profound one for me would be that kind of concept of talent versus effort. Because for me, as a young teen, I definitely was very middle of the road. I was never like at the bottom of the class, never top of the class. But as a result, I bought into this concept that it was all about natural talent. Whereas actually the experience with, say, going through selection with the SAS reserve, you see the stronger, fitter, faster, better looking, all of those people, they quit or they fail. And actually what you're left with is this group that are just super determined, super unsung in their approach, just very persevering, resilient, able to adapt. And then I guess that same lesson learned again through a different parable, which was with Steve when I turned up at the Paralympic kayaking team, which is, look, I don't care that you haven't got talent. I don't care that you can't stay the right way up for more than 20 seconds. What I care about is that you're determined, you're committed, and I don't doubt that you're going to give it everything you need to give it until you get to where you want to get to. And I'd love to go back to 13-year-old Darren and say, look, I know that you're not top of class. I know that people doubt that you're ever going to achieve this or that, but you're not trying to be anybody else. You're trying to, be the better version of yourself, the best version of yourself. And actually all of these experiences of failing and not winning races and being, being doubted, ultimately are going to make you a stronger adult and someone that is more likely to go on and achieve incredible things than the person that won every race, that was the top of every class, that never struggled. And I think that's a really powerful lesson.
And please say yes, but I hope you are in educational institutions the world over talking to young people.
I do enjoy talking to young people because, unlike an adult audience, you never know what you're going to get. I think some of the questions are brilliant, and secondary school is probably the best place to cut your teeth as a speaker because they're savage. If you bore them, you know that you're boring them.
Yeah, pish and tush. I doubt that happens. Wonderful. So we're going to ramp up to Shakespeare. I'll just ask one other question. You might have already covered this, but what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given, even if this is a reincorporation?
Best piece of advice I've ever been given would probably be Kate's thing. It's not about how you feel right now, it's about who you want to be. Because I just apply that to my life whenever I go through something difficult, relationship breakup, losing dad, not qualifying for the Paralympics, all of that stuff. It's always come back to Kate's advice of, yeah, it sucks right now, but in a year's time or in 4 years' time, I want to be this person.
And Kate is a trailblazing example of one of your heroes on the daily. What's Kate's second name, just to amplify her?
Kate Betts. She's a physiotherapist at the Midland Centre for Spinal Injuries. So Kate, I hope she listens. If she's not, I'm going to send her this podcast.
Yes, and I'd like to meet her too. She's heroic and wonderful.
Yes, she is.
All that shebang. Okay, so we're coming up to Shakespeare shortly to talk about legacy. But just before we get there, this is the pass the golden baton moment, please. Now you've experienced this from within, who would you most like to pass the golden baton along to keep the golden thread of this storytelling going, Darren?
There's a young lad called Jack Ryan who came along to the first of our adaptive expeditions trips. And he was someone about a year ago I got a phone call from, and he said, look, this is my story, and I'd really love to go on an adventure with you because I'm really trying to find my way through life. And Jack's story was, he was a carpenter, 25 years old. He started to lose his eyesight, went to the doctors, and he was diagnosed with a rare optical condition. The life of me, I can't remember it. And over the course of the next 3 months, Jack went from fully 20/20 vision to absolutely no vision, complete darkness. And, we're now 3 years later, and I think everybody listening can't imagine how hard it would be to lose your eyesight. And for Jack, I am eternally, constantly inspired by him. He handles it far better and greater than I think I would ever manage that. And what I've really loved about adaptive expeditions is that you form friendships with people like Jack, and you see how he is still a strong, able, physically fit guy who can lift a kayak up over his head and move things. And you see actually how he can help me and I can help him. And there's this beautiful kind of dance where, regardless of your disabilities, you can support each other, and one supports the other in a way that the other can't support the other. And I have the highest hopes that whilst he is still very much in the rebuild phase of his life, like I was in the first 3-4 years, that Jack is going to go on to achieve incredible things in his life and will inspire countless people by showing them that perhaps you don't need to be able to see the light to find it.
My privilege to speak to Jack Ryan, if you'd be kind enough to furnish me with a warm introduction. He's also got a very heroic name already. Jack Ryan has his own TV series already. Yeah. And this Jack Ryan needs his own too, obviously. Wonderful. Thank you for that. And now, inspired by Shakespeare and all the worlds of stage, this is the actual, it's not the actual first folio, but this is when I went to drama school, to the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School. This is the actual complete works that I got for myself. It says here, Chris Grimes, 16986. Anyway, so this is about legacy now, borrowed from all the worlds of stage and all the better women, merely players. We're going to talk about legacy now, Darren. How, when all is said and done, would Darren Edwards, groundbreaking adaptive adventurer, how would you most like to be remembered?
It sounds weird, but I like to be remembered by putting myself out of a job. I like to be remembered that there are so many. There's like a whole new generation of inspiring adaptive adventurers that do incredible things. That the mere story of Darren Edwards, who was one of the first, is actually one of the duller stories to tell, because adventure in the outdoors and places like Cardigan Valley and hills and rivers and lakes, they belong to all of us. And I really hope that what we're setting up with AE, Adaptive Expeditions, empowers this next generation of people that will know no different than opportunity and possibility in the great outdoors, and not hear that word impossible, because I heard it over and over and over again until I was sick in the tooth with it. And that's probably why redefining impossible is what we've called the South Pole thing, because it's just challenging that concept. So I'd love that the legacy is that we build this community of inspiring people that do incredible things, that then go and share their story on stage, and I can just sit and watch.
Wonderful. Where can we find out all about you, Darren Edwards, and everything you're up to in the world of adaptive expeditions? Where can we find out all about you on the internet?
So Darren Edwards _adventurer is my kind of social media thing for most things. I'm not on much, to be fair, Instagram and Facebook. Adaptive Expeditions is Adaptive Expeditions, goes unsurprisingly. And Darren Edwards Speaker.com is the website. But social media is the best place to engage, isn't it? And LinkedIn as well, obviously.
Wonderful. And if you haven't already booked Darren Edwards as a speaker, I've seen him. He's awesome. You should book him. This is great. As this has been your moment in the sunshine in the Good Listening To show, stories of distinction and genius, is there anything else you'd like to say, Darren?
I was going to say thank you, obviously, for having me on. Thank you to Joe Bradshaw. But just as a sort of final takeaway for the listeners, I think for me, if I've 3 words that one of my closest friends said to me while I was in intensive care that have stuck with me and resonate every single day, is strength through adversity. And it's the name of the talk I often give. And I think we all go through difficult moments in our lives. We all experience adversity at home, at work. It's just don't give up hope. And, things are tough right now. But like Kate said, think about the person you want to become, the person that has bounced forward, not simply bounced back. And adversity, if anything, will make us stronger. So
there's a lovely connection to that outdoor app, What 3 Words, and your What 3 Words are strength through adversity.
Yeah, there we go.
Wonderful.
Like that.
So thank you so much. It's been an absolute privilege listening to you, Darren Edwards. Thank you for listening across the various social media platforms as well. If you'd like a conversation about guesting too, then have a look at thegoodlisteningtoshow.com. That's the website. And yes, I'll play us out with this music, which will get edited on in any case later. But just in case you've forgotten to say anything else, is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, all good. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the glorious Darren Edwards. I've been Chris Grimes, and just listen to this outro music. Good night. You've been listening to the Good Listening To Show with me, Chris Grimes. If you'd like to be in the show too, or indeed gift an episode to capture the story of someone else with me as your host, then you can find out how care of the series strands at the goodlisteningtoshow.com website. And one of these series strands is called Legacy Life Reflections. If you've been thinking about how to go about recording your life story or the life story of somebody close to you for posterity, but in a really interesting, effortless and creative way, then maybe the Good Listening To Show can help. Using the unique structure of the show, I'll be your host as together we take a trip down memory lane to record the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 of either your or their life story. And then you can decide whether you go public or private with your episode. Get in touch if you'd like to find out more. Tune in next week for more stories from the clearing. And don't forget to subscribe and review wherever you get your podcasts. Boom shaka wow wow. Thank you for watching, and I'll give you a call in a moment.